The following production is brought to you by the Talkin Buds Leafs Show.
Here we go. Talkin Buds Leafs Show, episode 279. A rare Friday episode for the Talkin Buds Leafs Show. But when they're on these California road trips, it just completely turns your whole world upside down. The 10:40 puck drop. That's a grind,
awful.
man.
Yeah.
It's a grind. It's a grind, especially, I got a little 8-month-old baby upstairs, and it's just, I was fighting it last night to stay awake for that one.
Well,
I was thinking about this before we jumped on. The last 3 games have been a perfect sort of microcosm of what the Leafs have been since the Four Nations break. Like, you go back to Saturday night against the Nashville Predators. We talked about it last Sunday. Just a debacle after the first period. Then they come out on Tuesday and beat the shit out of the Philadelphia Flyers, so bad to the point that John Tortorella gets fired on Thursday morning because he's just waving the white flag behind the bench. He can't watch it anymore.
Yeah.
Then they go out on Thursday night against the worst team in the league, and they lose in a shootout to the San Jose Sharks for the second time in a month. And I'm trying to think about this, like, from a big picture standpoint, a 10,000-foot view, if you will. And I think, listen, I think these guys, everybody's eyes are on the prize with respect to the playoffs, and I think that this team is really struggling to get up to play these games against quote unquote lesser opponents. And you go on Twitter or Reddit or whatever, and people are freaking out about it. Like, there's just a freak out going on about, oh my God, they lost to the San Jose Sharks for the second time in a month. The San Jose Sharks have 2 wins over playoff teams in the month of March, and both of them are against the Maple Leafs. And I just kind of like, on the one hand, I kind of get it. They're like, can we just get on with it and get to April already and start playing the games that matter? But on the other hand, it's like, you're in the race for the division, and you just don't get the slack that maybe like a Florida or a Tampa gets when they mail it in against these lesser opponents, because you haven't done anything in the playoffs, and it's just compounded over 9 years of watching it. And I think that's why a shootout loss to the San Jose Sharks is just met with this extreme reaction from the fan base. Does that make sense?
Well, it was one of the most frustrating games of the year without a doubt. Like, what an absolute shit show that game was. Joseph Woll was not good at all. The amount of opportunities they got, but then would just give up right after was just unbelievable. I think more than anything after last night, I'm questioning more than ever if they should even show up for the first round. Because if they're going to play like that, they're cooked. See you later.
Why do you think they play like that, though? Like, why?
I don't know.
Why is it against these lesser teams?
Goosey hockey last night. Like, holy shit, just back and forth. They went down, they'd come back, and then they would just make a stupid mistake every time. Like, they were just trading stupid mistakes. They couldn't just get it on the rails and start playing a solid brand of hockey. And then at some point they were just so far behind that they had to kind of just throw everything at the kitchen sink, and eventually they tied the game. But holy crap, if they play loosey-goosey like that in the playoffs, we already know what's going to happen. And I went to bed last night thinking, would the Leafs beat the San Jose Sharks in a playoff series? That's what I went to bed thinking last night. Because I don't know.
Just want to know.
San Jose Sharks look like a playoff team against the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Where's the disconnect happening? That's what I want to know. Like, because Berube and his coaching staff are not preaching it. If you listen to him before the game, he's like, it doesn't matter where they are where these teams are in the standings. The playoffs are right around the corner. We need to make sure we're paying attention to details. We need to make sure we're checking, so on and so on. And then you watch them, and it's like that's not what's happening.
No,
that's not what I'm seeing. And
Absolutely
it's
not.
up and down the lineup. Like, on the first goal, it's Benoit and Ekman Larson asleep. On the shorthanded goal, it's Austin Matthews lazy on the back check.
Yeah, that
Like,
back check was brutal. The coverage was brutal. And that's what I said about the 5-forward power play the other day when you brought it up as a concern. That was a perfect example right there. If you get caught going the other way, Mitch Marner kind of looks like a fish out of water. And if your forwards don't get back and take the right guy, even though the one San Jose player did kind of an incredible job kind of setting a pick for that guy to get the opportunity to shoot, but it was... Yeah, that's the dangers of a 5-forward power play right there. And you're right, it is up and down the lineup. Everybody made mistakes last night. There was a lot of good shifts though. There was a lot of shifts where they were on the forecheck and getting chances or whatever, but just the giving up back-breaking opportunities. It's just what are you doing? Like you need to find a happy medium here between getting your offense and not giving up so many goddamn opportunities.
Yeah, it's interesting, and it's kind of the point that I was making off the top. And like, if you look back, like this morning, I went back and looked at the last 10 games that Tampa's played, and like there's a loss to Philly in there. Like they've lost some games to some teams that are beneath them in the standings. But I guess like the point I was making off the top is they have a cup in the last few years, so fans don't freak out. They're like, yeah, whatever. We're just waiting to get to the playoffs, and these guys will lock in. Yeah. And the same thing with Florida. Like you look at Florida, it's like they've got a loss to the Bruins in there. Like they've lost to teams that are beneath them. They went in against, I know Washington's the top team in the East, but like last Saturday, they went in against the Capitals, the team that is like 1-1A in the East, the Panthers and the Capitals, and they got spanked. And people don't freak out because they're like, whatever, they'll turn it on when it really matters in April. And these guys just don't have that. They're not afforded that luxury because we're all just like, are you guys serious right now?
Yeah.
And when I look at them, Ryan, to me, Matthews and Marner in particular seem to be really wearing that. I look at these two guys, they don't look dialed in at all. They look mentally and emotionally exhausted. They look just like completely stressed out by the whole thing. And you compare that in contrast to Tavares and Nylander. I think William Nylander at the best of times, sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's a bad thing. It's just always relaxed. I think that's just who he is as a person. And Johnny keeps scoring goals and adding to his stats, so he looks pretty chill overall. But I just like, you look at your leadership group, 34 and 16 in particular. It's like these two guys they look like it's really wearing on them. They look like two guys that are sitting there thinking to themselves, "Oh no, here we go. We're headed into the playoffs, and if we collapse again, this fan base is going to go nuclear, and the stress on us is going to pile up even more." It just doesn't look like two guys that are very locked in. Is the point I'm trying to make here in a very long-winded way.
Well, but last night they had a couple great shifts. Mitch Marner had 3 points at the end of the night. Like they still had a good night, but it's like their problem is so easy to fix. Like it's just like you just need to just buckle up and play a little bit tighter. Like you just have to limit those back-breaking mistakes. Like you all have the ability to go get 3 points every single night. They all had point night last night. And all of them had 100 opportunities to score in overtime. Like Nylander came in, McMahon had a breakaway, Matthews hit the crossbar. Like they had so many opportunities to get more points and win that game. But it's just, if you're gonna give up 5 goals against the San Jose Sharks, like you just gotta. I don't know what they have to do, because you're right. It is up and down the lineup. You can look at the top guys, but everyone made a mistake last night. Every single person. Like it was across the board. It was.
Why are you not ready to play? Like what? Why are you not? And we're on another coach. Like we used to rip Babcock for this. We used to rip Sheldon for this. It's like we can rip Berube for it, but it's like you guys are like, this is a veteran hockey team. Why are you not ready to play? Joseph Woll, what is going on? Like Joseph Woll just. Anthony Stolarz once again has the lead for the game 1 starter after the way Joseph Woll played. That was one of Joseph Woll's worst games of his career, in my opinion. Yeah,
the one
like you're just not locked in.
Yeah, the one where Ekman Larsson played the 2-on-1, he let the guy shoot and just went right through him, and it's like, oh my god.
Well, and then there was the absolute debacle. One of the worst, most comedic goals you'll ever see allowed in this league.
Yeah,
like terrible.
Yeah, it was, and it's just, you're gonna look back at the end of the year when they're in the first round playing in Tampa or Florida, and they pissed away 2 points against the fucking San Jose Sharks that I honestly believe would beat them in a playoff series. So
I'm going to be honest with you, Ryan. I'm. Here's my hot take, and you can call me out in a few weeks, and anyone else who's watching this can call me out in a few weeks. They have to play Tampa in the first round. I think they need it. I think Tampa's a team that they have a history with. They match up pretty well with. They get up to play them. I think if they play Florida, it's just going to be intimidation. And like this team's mental psyche, this is the point that I was trying to make earlier when I talk about Matthews and Marner. Yes, you look at the game sheet at the end of the night against San Jose. They've got their cookies. It's great. But I'm talking body language. I'm talking like appearance and just the general vibe they're giving out. It's not great. So they match up against Florida. They're going to go into that series and just be like, oh no, we're such a bad matchup here. This team's going to run us out of the rink. It's just not good.
Finished,
they win the division and they play Ottawa. The whole narrative is, I
would way rather play Ottawa.
Despise. Nope. I absolutely despise listening to anyone on sports radio being like, well, you got to win the division and get an easier matchup. It's like there's no such thing as an easy matchup for this team. No. One thing that we have learned in 9 years is this group of guys is going to make it as difficult on themselves as humanly possible. And I just think the Tampa matchup, just the history there, the confidence they might have there, they get up to play them. They have confidence that they can beat them. I think that you'll get the best version of these guys in a matchup against Tampa than you will against either Florida or Ottawa or whoever. I just think they'll be more locked in that matchup than they will against either one of those two teams. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. I think because Tampa is probably the least heavy team or just doesn't have that player, doesn't have that Kachuk, doesn't have that Bennett that just destroys them. Like one guy who decides he wants to make a difference, like if they played the Caps in a playoff series, Tom Wilson would single-handedly beat them. Kachuk would single-handedly beat them. Bennett will single-handedly beat them. So I get it from that sense, and they've also beaten Tampa in a playoff series. But I would way rather play the Ottawa Senators than play the Florida Panthers. So if they play the Florida Panthers, I'm not even going to watch. I'm just going to cancel the podcast. You find a co-host. I don't need to watch that. I don't need to watch an ass kicking. I'm good.
I think my point with Ottawa, Ryan, is this. Like the theme of today's episode is pressure, and these guys would go into a first round series against the Ottawa Senators. These guys being in a position of being the favorite. Oh no, terrible. Yeah. Ottawa gets in. They're playing with house money. Guess what? Guess what the Ottawa Senators' goal was as an organization this year? Make the playoffs. Mission accomplished. They're playing with house money. This is a successful season. Doesn't matter. Everything after game one of the playoffs for the Ottawa Senators is gravy, and they will play as such. They're also a team, as we've seen, that has a ton of confidence playing against this Leaf team. They know how to beat them. They know how to get them off their game. They know how to get them rattled. And I hate both of those matchups. And I think just Tampa, in terms of getting the best version out of this Leaf team, in terms of history, in terms of heavy hockey, all that stuff is the best case scenario for this team to win a round in April, period.
You know what? You know what's going to be funny at all those scenarios is if they play Tampa, they're going to go to 7 games. If they play Ottawa, they're going 7 games. If they play Florida, they're going to get swept. And then we're going to look back and be like, well, at least they went to 7 games. Like it seemed like 7 games was like an accomplishment at that point. I honestly believe if they play Florida in the first round, it could be 4 games and out. They could get swept.
I think that Florida will just break their will.
They're not even. Yeah, that team is a nightmare fuel for this. Yes. Like they're screwed if they play that team. Yeah. They're so done.
They'll just break their will. So it's
at least you know what I can buy the narrative that at least like you went out and won the division. Like you finally did something that you've never done before. Every single year at the start of the year, we're like, win the division. Your regular season goes, but you haven't won a division. At least if they went and played Ottawa in the first round, it's like, hey, they won out. They went out. They won the division. That's an accomplishment they've never had before, and that's something they should feel good about going into the first round. I think that is the only upside of that kind of whole narrative. I totally get them being favorites. It's not them being favorites. It's just a disaster. So, but now we're looking at like, if they play Tampa or Florida in the first round, you're just going to go back and you're going to look at the points they pissed away in the last couple of games against Nashville. And again, they've pissed away 2 against San Jose, and it's just going to be like great. So I don't know. At least if they get Ottawa, they won the division and they can feel good about that.
Yeah, I just don't think the bigger conversation here is the end of the season and moving on from a Marner and a Tavares, because I just think there's so much baggage here. And you're talking about, well, if you win the division, it's an accomplishment. I agree, but I don't think any of these guys will feel that way. I think they go into the playoffs gripping their sticks, man. Like they would go in and be like, and like I said, against Florida, I think they would just be like, oh man, we are fucked. And against Ottawa, it would be, oh man, we better win this series or it's gonna be bad. It's gonna be really bad. Whereas Tampa, it's like, we can beat these guys.
Yeah, we've beat
these guys before. Yeah. Vasilevsky, if there's a team in this league in the last 3 years that has had success against Andre Vasilevsky, it's the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I just think that their mindset is so fragile. And so if you look at it from a higher lens, it's kind of like, this is all you need right here to look at this group at the end of the year and say, maybe we do just let Mitch go out the door. Maybe we do let John go out the door. We need to bring some guys in here that aren't carrying this baggage, aren't carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders and feeling the pressure from this fan base. Because it's like, forget 1967. Forget the fact that they haven't won a playoff round since 2004 or whatever. This is all about the last 9 years. Like you look at that San Jose Sharks and you see Macklin Celebrini and you see Will Smith. That was Matthews and Marner. That was them the year they went in. Now, the Sharks aren't going to make the playoffs, but that was then the year they went in and played Washington in the first round. And it was just absolute, like, no, whatever. You just got into the playoffs. Yay. Like that's where those guys are at in their career right now. And it's like, this is just 9 years of failure after failure after failure after failure. And I just really see it wearing on those two guys in particular. And it's just like, again, you don't want to sit and like do a eulogy when we're still 10 games away from the playoffs. But I do think like there's evidence here to support, like, we need a new vibe in this room right now because there's a disconnect happening with this group. And it's just, they're getting closer to the playoffs and it looks like it's weighing on them more and more and more.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that. I think, yeah, the look on their faces on the bench or when something goes wrong, it is kind of a I'm shitting my pants type of look. So I can't really disagree. I kind of get what you're saying.
This NHL season has been as predictable as a puck rolling on its edge. No one knows where it's going. But that just means there's time for your favorite team to figure things out and games left for you to get in the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL.
It's super easy for first-timers to get started. Try betting on something simple like picking a team to win. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app, select your team, and place your first bet. And if you're new to DraftKings, listen up. New customers bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets instantly.
Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/ice.
Just moving on to discussing more potential lineup adjustments. Scotty Lawton.
God.
Scotty Lawton.
Lineup adjustments.
Scotty Lawton got a goal. That's positive.
Yeah.
That's positive. That guy needs to get going. Obviously, there was a lot of Philly talk since they were here on Tuesday, and then Torts, man.
Have you ever seen a guy just come out and be like, fire me?
Yeah. Well,
Please.
dude, did you see him on the bench? Well, it doesn't make sense, man. Like Torts is in that sort of coaching area where it's like a Peter Laviolette is too. It's like you bring these guys in for 2 years tops to get the most out of a team that's underperforming. You do not have John Tortorella behind a bench of a team that is in a full-scale rebuild. Like the guy looked like he was waving the white flag on Tuesday.
Yeah, it was...
So a lot of the discussion from people from Philly are like, Scotty Lawton's a glue guy. He's a great guy to have in the room. You brought him in here to perform for you in the playoffs. Like, just give him some time. And so yesterday, Berube comes out and says that he's, quote, pretty confident that Max Pacioretty will be available to play in the playoffs, which makes sense and leads to what we were speculating about last week, which is, due to the salary cap and Pacioretty's body, they've just shut him down for the playoffs, which I think is the smart play. Does that change the way you want to roll out your bottom six here? Because I just keep coming back to, what is the philosophy with how you want to roll out lines 3 and 4? Are you going to go into the playoffs and be like, we need our top 2 lines to score? Like, you guys have to do the scoring. So when you're out there lines 3 and 4, you just can't give up a goal. Yeah. So is that it? Or are you looking for more scoring? Because if you're looking for more scoring, the conversation then shifts to a Nick Robertson or whatever.
Okay. The fourth line is the fourth line. I'm not doing this thing where I'm trying to craft the perfect fourth line. We know that they can't have a great fourth line. You have to pray that they just play well on whatever night they're together. The only thing I will say about the bottom 6 is that third line is way too small. Too small. And
yes,
unless Nick Robertson has the most prime shooting position to put it in the net, the guy is useless. And he's all of a sudden he's just taking penalties every single night, it seems like. He's in the box every night. It's like, well, if you're not scoring and you're taking penalties, you're kind of useless. Him and Domi out there
small
together, they're just too small. They're too small. That's it. That's the problem with that line. They don't have anybody to replace them who is skilled enough and is big enough to play a different style of game. So they're kind of screwed. I hate to tell you.
Well, I think that's where you look at like maybe a Pacioretty and like, does he come in? For me, it's like Max Domi is the piece here where it's like, where do you put this guy? Like, where does he go? Like he won't fit. The weakest part of Max's game is his defensive play. So it's like he won't fit in a bottom 6 where the idea is, oh, well, you just can't give up a goal. That's not where you put Max Domi. The top 2 lines are set. Like they're not gonna break up lines 1 and 2. They're playing too well and scoring too many goals. And there's a clause in Matthews and Marner's contract that says they absolutely have to play together no matter what. So it's just like, what do you do with him? Where do you put him?
I think it's pretty clear on the philosophy of this team this year. It's the top 2 lines are rolling out 24/7. Look at the ice time last night. Domi, 9 minutes. Lorentz, 9 minutes. Yarncroc, 9 minutes. Robertson, 10 minutes. Lawton, 12 minutes. And that's with some penalty kill time. So there were a decent amount of penalties in the game last night. So that's why some of the ice time's down. But they're rolling these guys, man. That's what they're gonna do. They're gonna roll the top 2 lines. They've all played 25 minutes last night, and you just gotta pray that they show up. That's what it is. I don't know. You're gonna need a big third line goal at some point, but don't rely on it.
On the one hand, I'm kind of like, that's a dangerous game to play because as we've discussed, and as anyone who's covered this team discussed, they've had trouble scoring goals in the playoffs. So you're looking for some depth piece to score a goal for you. But on the other hand, I'm kind of like, no, man, let's go down with the ship here. Like, we've got 2 guys in the core 4 whose contracts are up at the end of the year. Let's do it. Just throw them out there and say, you guys are going to do this. And if you don't, we're making wholesale fundamental changes to start next year, and we're just going to go down with the ship.
Mm-hmm.
That's, to me, that I actually kind of like that idea, because then you just, at the end of the year, you're not sitting there going like, well, what if they did this and what if they did that? It's like, nope, we took our
why are we trying to create something that doesn't exist? The third line isn't getting better. Get over it. You can come on your radio show every day and throw one and move Lorentz up and move Lawton down and then move Robertson up, move Robertson down, move Domi up. We do whatever you want to do. They don't have a third line that you're going to feel good about because they can't. Because they don't have the players. They don't have the horses. The horses are the top 2 lines. Look back at the greats of the game. Like, look back at all the greats in the game, and how all the moments of they came up big in elimination games. Like, I am tired of waiting for a Nick Robertson Game 7 goal to get us over the hump here. Like, that's a fucking joke, if you ask me. How about you do the Stevie Y and come over the red line and take a clapper and go top cheese and move on? Like, well, how about you do that? Like, I'm not sitting here. If you're waiting for a Scott Lawton Game 7 goal, you might as well just pack your bags for Mexico. Like,
it's
for
funny,
God's
man, because
sakes.
that's so true. Because, like, we do focus on that. These guys, and that's why it drives me crazy when people are like, oh, it's tough to play here. It's like, dude, these guys get passes left and right. Like, we and every other team that covers the show are going into the playoffs talking about how you're going to get a goal from your bottom six. And you're right. You're right. It's like, no, why don't these big boys for once in a playoff series take it over and be dominant? Why doesn't Austin Matthews have a 2-goal game at some point in the playoffs? Yeah. Why doesn't Mitch Marner look the way he looked in the Four Nations? Why is that just not an option? And you always come back to the Edmonton Oilers, who last year, what happened? McDavid and Draisaitl were like, we're going to the Cup final. And then they go down in the Cup final. We're storming back and forcing a Game 7. And it took literally a goaltender who's going to go into a Hall of Fame and one of the most loaded, difficult teams to play against ever to beat them.
Yeah, they almost won that series. Like they almost beat that team we've been talking about. That's like the boogeyman. Like, it's just and it's just, they're not. Like, I look back, I'm trying to think of old team. Like, look at the Blackhawks. The years they won the 3 cups, they were pretty loaded in depth. They had great guys at the top. They had a number 1 defenseman. They had Taves, who was an animal at the time. They had Kane, who would score a big goal when it mattered, but they also had all the Bickles and the Bolins and the Hosas and all those dudes who did score big goals. But I mean, why are we trying to like create something that isn't there? They don't have a bottom 6. They don't, because they can't. So if you're going to be the big boys and the top dogs, then it's time to have your Patrick Kane score the goal in overtime to win the Stanley Cup moment, or the Stevie Y clapper moment, or, like, it's like at some point, what are these? You can't win a series with your top guys. Like, it's hard to win a cup without I don't expect them to win a cup because I just don't think their team's deep enough. I don't think they're good enough. But you can't win one round with your top guys. You can't beat one team with your top players that are supposed to be some of the best players in the league, and they all went to the Four Nations, and they all have 30, 40 goals and 80 points. Like, you can't win one series like that. Like, it's ridiculous.
But I think, like, this market, the amount of times I hear the name Nick Paul when talking about the Leaf roster. Whoa, we need a Nick Paul. We need a guy to have a game like Nick Paul had in Game 7 a couple years ago. Like, there's an obsession with finding a guy to play on your third line that's going to score 2 goals in a Game 7. Like, Max Talbot is the most famous example back in the day for the Pittsburgh Penguins.
There's and people aren't like it's a frustrating argument because people aren't wrong. I said, like those Blackhawk teams, they had a lot of dudes who scored big goals for them, and they weren't dudes on their first line. So yeah, depth is really important, but there hasn't been the Edmonton Oilers single-handedly beat the Los Angeles Kings every single year because they're too talented, and they're just way more talented than they are, and they roll over them. Like that.
I think that might change this year. I think that might change this year. But your point is well made.
But like, it's just and people aren't wrong. You do need a big goal from a guy in a Game 7 to sometimes get you to that Cup final or whatever. But I just like, this is a large sample size we're dealing with here. It is massive, and it's just like, you can't win one series based off the fact that you just are better than the other team, and you have more talent, and you have better top players. Like, it's just like, come on. Like, if you're just waiting for that Nick Paul goal, you're good luck. Good luck.
You can't come away from a series being like, Mitch Marner could not be stopped in this series. Austin Matthews could not be stopped. Like that's just not an option. Yeah. It's just not an option.
How many times has Sidney Crosby won a series where it's like, this guy was literally unbelievably good, and he just, that line couldn't be stopped, or Malkin was so good that line couldn't be stopped. Like, it's just, like it's ridiculous. Like, it makes you question, these guys are elite, but really, how elite are they if they can't get by one playoff series based on how elite they are? Like, it's crazy.
Well, Ryan, I said the theme of today's episode is pressure, and that's what we've come full circle. It's the amount of baggage that exists here, and just the you see it on their faces, man. Like they show Matthews and Marner on the bench, and the two of them just look like they're going to cry. Like they look completely
I know. They really
dejected.
Yeah, they need someone to again throw a spaz. I'm waiting for someone to throw a spaz or something. Yeah. Like, start
Berube's on the bench
other
last
guys.
night. Yeah, Berube's on the bench last night, losing his fucking mind because he's like, "What is going on?" Mm-hmm. It's just like, and then this is why people get frustrated, and this is why the last two episodes I've absolutely teed off on Brendan Shanahan, because the evidence is overwhelming, and we're going to be tripping over ourselves to give Mitch Marner $14 million. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Like, that has to, and that's why I like the thought process of, yes, let's play these guys 20 plus minutes a night in the first round, and you go out and win a fucking series.
Yeah.
And if you don't, then that's it. We're going down with the ship, and that'll inform the decisions we make on July 1st.
Yeah, it's just like, how can you create this team that you just have so many elite players that you just have to pay them, you have to keep them because you can't let go of elite talent, and you win in this league with elite talent? Like, how can you look at the way they've built this team and then all of a sudden just be hoping for some random who doesn't have a great line on the bottom six, maybe isn't exactly the most like, if you're waiting for that goal, or if you're waiting for that Curtis Joseph goaltending performance, because that's another factor that people like to bring up too, good luck. You're going to be waiting for a long time, man, because it's not coming. And if it does, I'll be very happy. And I'm sure I hope Max Domi can score a big goal. I hope Scott Laughton score a big goal, because I think they're good dudes. But I just don't understand how people are just hoping for something that just isn't there. It's like, no. You pay these guys. You built this team because they're so elite. They're so talented that you should be able to just win, because that's how elite and talented they are, because that's what the philosophy is here. So if they're not going to win on that elite talent, then they're not going to fucking win anything. Like, it's just ridiculous. I don't know.
All right, buddy.
That's such a frustrating conversation. It drives me insane.
Well, and I think it just it comes to the forefront because, like I said, like this is now in the span of a week, we've gone out against two terrible teams in the Nashville Predators and the San Jose Sharks, and it just hasn't looked good. Listen, at the end of the day, like, am I going to live and die with every loss like this? Especially when like they're in the playoffs, it starts in 10 days. No, I'm not. But like I said, I'm honed in on Matthews and Marner specifically, and the body language, and just it's not good to me. There's no way Craig Berube is not preaching these guys up, down, left, and right. Be ready to play, be locked in, be dialed in, and you just. Like, them coming out and looking the way they looked in the first 10 minutes of that hockey game last night is the most fucking predictable thing ever. We've seen it over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Anyways, so back-to-back this weekend. We will not be back on Sunday because the Leafs play Sunday night against the Anaheim Ducks. But prior to that, they will be in LA Saturday night for Hockey Night in Canada. Ryan, the LA Kings have lost at home a total of 3 times this year. So the Maple Leafs look to become the 4th team to beat the LA Kings at home. You mentioned them earlier with respect to the Oilers and how the Oilers just sort of dispatch them every year. I actually think, given the Oilers, like the fact that the Oilers are so banged up, the fact that Stu Skinner is Stu Skinner, if you're the LA Kings, you're looking at that potential playoff matchup this year and you're going, this is our best chance to get rid of these guys in the first round and move on to the second round.
I guarantee you, if those two guys are healthy, there's a 0% chance of that happening. Absolutely not.
All right. Well, like I said, we will not be back on Sunday. We will be back on Monday, and we will discuss the weekend back-to-back in California. So if you'd like to join us for that, hit the like and subscribe button below. As I say every week, we are 10 games left, Ryan. Is it 10? Yeah, 10 games left. And then we head to the playoffs, which means post-game shows. We will be doing a post-game show after every single Maple Leaf playoff game, unless they play the Florida Panthers, in which case Ryan is going to quit the podcast, and I will be here. And I will be here by myself.
Yeah, literally. Why show up? Like, it's over. Like,
If you're listening to the audio version, please do the same. Leave a 5-star review, leave a comment. It helps us out very much. We will see you guys. Oh, no, I almost didn't do it, Ryan.
Here we
go.
Spread the word. Tell your friends.
We will see you guys on Monday.